It's that time of the month to go ahead and talk about all of the books that I read in February. What a range of books I have, and what an even crazier range of ratings I have. So let's just get into it. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. I am going to be doing a wrap up of all of the books that I read in February. Also, before we get into the video, please make sure you check that description box below to see if you want to follow me on any of my socials, my Pango Books account, or my Patreon. It is a new month, which means it is a new Patreon book club pick this month, which you would want to head on over there to see what that is. Join in with us, have some talks. We'll be doing a live chat with it. Also get some exclusive content. And if you are in the higher tier, you also can pick a book for me to read for that month. So with all that out of the way, let's just get into my wrap up. There were quite a few books. I just want to get into it and talk about some of these books that I read that were hits, some that were misses, and some that were just kind of in between. So the first book that I read in February, which if you follow my channel, you will have seen that I posted a spoilery vlog in the first parts of February, and that is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because there is that video up. You can go back and watch it, but just be warned, there is a lot of spoilery content in there. So if you have not read this, I do not suggest going to watch the video unless you don't mind the spoilers. I gave this book a 3-star. I feel like it was the weakest in the Crescent City series. Actually, probably the weakest in all of Sarah J. Maas's books, aside from A Court of Frost and Starlight. I felt like there was just too much going on here. There's way too many loose ends that have not even been wrapped up. Way too many POVs. I felt like there was just too much going on. Again, you can go watch my thoughts in that video, but it was just a 3-star. It didn't wow me. For this being the conclusion of Bryson Hunt's story, I felt like there was way more going on than Bryson Hunt, and I don't feel like this was their book for a conclusion. Just way too many loose ends. So just a 3-star. Then the next book that I ended up reading was the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. I actually read all of these individually on Everand, which used to be called Scribd. And I will say the audiobooks were very good for this. So if you are an audiobook girly, I highly suggest checking out the audiobooks over there on Everand. But this is 5 books in one complete collection. It is following our girl who is not really a serial killer, but she's not really an assassin. She's just out for revenge about the people that wronged her in her hometown. There is our male main character who is an FBI agent, and he is trying to track down our serial killer, and she eludes him at every turn, but there is a romance between them. I will say, Book 1 really was kind of just a 3-star for me. I didn't feel the characters. I didn't feel the romance like it was supposed to be. However, once Book 2 got there and I was like really into the book and I was really into the characters, it just took off for me. I was consumed. I couldn't stop listening to this over there on Everand. I was finding things around the apartment to do just so I could listen to this book. Again, I absolutely loved it. All of the books, aside from the first one, I gave 4 stars to, but the first one I did give 3 because I felt like, of course, it's the first book in a series. You're setting up everything, and I just didn't feel the romance at the time. Then the next book that I finally finished is Henry VIII, The Heart and the Crown by Alison Weir. If you also are a follower of my channel, you know that I've been reading this for about a month and a half now. I'm so happy that I finally got through it. This is not a book where you sit down and you binge it. This is a book where you have to take it in little increments because you are following the entire reign of Henry VIII, and it goes year by year about the things that he accomplished, things that had happened, different things in the court. So you could read maybe a couple years at a time. At some point, you just want to put it down because you're like, okay, I've had enough of, 1500s England. I need to get into my fantasy world or my romance world, whatever it is that you prefer to read. I loved this. Every time I would sit down in the mornings on the weekends to have a cup of coffee, I would dive in. Whenever my husband was donating plasma, I would just sit out in the car and read this. I'm so happy. It is a historical fiction. One thing that I really loved about this book is it is not written like a non-fiction. It is a fiction book where you are in the head of Henry VIII. So a lot of things that he is thinking or to himself with inner monologues, of course, is not true. Because how would we know what Henry VIII was thinking at every moment of his life? We wouldn't. So that's where the fiction comes in. A lot of the side characters that you meet, some of the conversations that he had, you don't even know if they're true. But the big hitting thing where he went to war with France, where Catherine of Aragon took down the Scottish king while he was away in France, different things that happened throughout his reign, the big hitting moments are accurately depicted in here. It is a wonderful book. So if you don't want to read a nonfiction, but you are interested in Henry VIII, the Tudor time frame, I suggest this one. It's very digestible, very easy to read. The next book that I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is one of my most anticipated books of 2024. It was just released at the beginning of February. I gave this book 4 stars. If you have watched my vlogs, you know that I almost DNF'd this book, and that still stands true. I was about 50 to 60% of the way through the book. I was not feeling it. I felt like it was very YA, juvenile, not feeling the romance, not feeling anything in this book. Something happened around the 60 or 70% mark with our 2 main characters. It just took off from there. I ended up loving the book. So again, Ali Hazelwood delivered a great book in a genre that she is just now debuting in. I will tell everyone that if you are not a huge Ali Hazelwood fan or a huge paranormal romance fan, you are not going to like this book. It is hard to get into the world, hard to get into the characters, but I tell you, once it clicks, it clicks. I know there's a lot of different reviews out there, some bad, some good, so just go in with an open mind. Don't go in with any preconceived notions of, well, my friends didn't like this, I'm probably not either. I almost DNF'd it, and then it ended up being a 4-star, if that tells you anything. And then the next book that I did read was the February book for the Alpha Ho Book Club that Becca and the Books hosts, and that is Bloodlands by Stacey Marie Brown. This is book 5 in the series. I am so happy that March will be the 6th and final book. I was loving this world. It's a dystopian fantasy romance. I am so happy it's ending. I am so happy because the first couple of books were very addicting. I was getting through them fast. They had a lot of things that were just conveniences that happened, a lot of not really great plot development, but you just wanted to keep reading. You get to book 4 and things kind of take a little bit of a change, which was nice. I did like that change, but I saw it slowing down. You get into book 5 and I feel like you hit the brakes. It just stops everything altogether. And we spend this entire book, at least 95% of this book, being a captive and just sitting around having conversations. It was so boring for me. I didn't understand why we had to have this slow moving of a book. I was reading it, not really reading it. I was totally out of the story. I'm so ready for book 6 because I'm ready to be done. If you do like a dystopian fantasy romance that deals with the Fae, deals with a real life place like Budapest, then you might end up liking this. Just know going in, the writing isn't that great. There are way too many explosions that happen. The plot progression is almost non-existent, and the romance is a super slow burn romance that you don't even feel. So I know that I'm not hyping this book up very well, but that is just my personal take on it. I know a lot of people love this series, and I can see why they do. It is just not hitting for me. The next book is actually a huge surprise to me. I had put this book on my TBR cart back in October whenever it was like spooky season. I just now read it in February when it's supposed to be the romance season, so I don't understand. But that is Blood Orange by Karina Halley. This is the Bookish Box edition. It's really stunning. This is the first book in the Dracula duet, and you are following our female main character where she is a witch and she is sent to basically like kill Dracula. And Dracula is actually a guy from like the 17th century where he lost his wife to a lot of brutality. And you're following them both. It was very insta-lovey, but I'm going to tell you right now, I went in here not even thinking I was going to like this book. This is my first dive into Karina Halley's writing. I was wowed. I know that there are a lot of people that do not like this book. I cannot wait to read the second book. It's called Black Rose. I immediately messaged Bookish Box and I was like, are you guys doing a special edition of the second book in this series? Because I need a matching copy. Of course, they couldn't tell me that. They said, we can't really reveal anything, but just watch our Instagram and Facebook. So I don't know if they're going to be doing a special edition of the second book, but I am planning on picking up Black Rose to continue on this series. This was wonderful. It's a vampire romance, and it's about a girl who is going to get revenge and kill Dracula, and it is about Dracula finding the love of his life, and it just goes from there. There's a lot of plot, a lot of things working behind the scenes, and at the very end, my jaw was dropped. Karina Halley went where authors are so scared to go, and that is doing the hardest thing at the end on a cliffhanger, and it paid off. It makes me want to go read Black Rose like immediately. So I highly suggest, if you guys like a spicy vampire romance and you don't mind overlooking kind of the writing at times, pick up Blood Orange. It's wonderful. So then it was time in the month for me to finally read my Patreon book club book of the month, which is Soulmates by Susan Lee. This was again my first time reading Susan Lee, and I'm so happy that I loved her writing. I loved her story and the way that she developed this. This is a YA contemporary romance where our main girl lives in California. She is Korean, but in the community of the Koreans at her high school, she's kind of an outcast. She's not real Korean because she doesn't speak Korean or wasn't born in Korea. She struggles with the identity of herself. She struggles with different things about her teenage life, and she doesn't know how to come to terms with it. She feels like she's a loner. But her best friend, Jacob Kim, moved away a few years prior to that to South Korea. She was upset with him. She felt like he was, just distancing himself, so she just pushed him away. She never kept in contact with him. Come to find out, Jacob Kim is a huge K-drama star over in South Korea. He ends up having a summer back in California where he's basically staying at her house because both of their moms are best friends. The story goes from there. I loved this. I loved the character progression, the things that the characters go through, the way that they struggle with to identify themselves. I just really loved everything. I felt like it was done very, very well, and I feel like it definitely portrayed teenage life and teenage love very well also. So I can't wait to read another book by Susan Lee, but I suggest if you like YA contemporary romances that have some hard-hitting topics, pick up Soulmates. It was so good. I then wanted to dive into a fantasy romance. I kind of felt myself going into a little bit of a slump. So I picked up A Court This Cruel and Lovely by Stacia Stark. I loved this fantasy romance. This is book 1 in a series. I still don't know if it's traditionally published or if it's an indie published. I think she's indie published. Yeah, I think she's indie published. I absolutely devoured this book. Our premise is our female main character is on the run because whenever you are a baby, you are given to the gods to give up your magical power. And then whenever you turn 25 winters, you get part of your power back. If you do not give up your power whenever you are basically 3 days old, then you are hunted down and killed. So our girl, she's on the run. She doesn't want to get caught. She runs into a band of mercenaries on the road, so she keeps everything concealed from them, doesn't want them to know what's really going on about her so they can turn her in. The male main character is in that band of mercenaries, and I'm going to tell you right now, their dynamic is so good. It is not enemies to lovers, but it's not like insta love either. They don't like each other. They don't trust each other. It's so good. I cannot wait to get into book 2. I can't wait to find out what happens to our girl, what happens to the romance, what is going to happen to a lot of characters in here, some side characters that I'm really into as well. So I highly suggest pick up A Court This Cruel and Lovely if you really like fantasy romance and you like a slow burn romance. I highly suggest. And then sadly, I got into a slump. I was feeling kind of weird. If you watched my weekly reset vlog that I did earlier this week, then you will know that I was just in kind of a mood, a funky mood. I don't really know how to describe it, but I ended up picking up Shallow River by H.D. Carlton. This was one of my in-club person book club picks. This one and the next 2 are all 3 my in-person book club picks for the month. And I usually love H.D. Carlton. I love her writing. I love the way that she writes dark romances where even though they are dark and gritty and things that you wouldn't want to happen to you, you feel for these characters. You are happy that they're getting a happy ever after, even though it's very morbid and twisted. It's kind of a weird experience to have, but I feel like H.D. Carlton does dark romances very well. Shallow River really fell short for me. I didn't really feel for the characters or the romance. It's very dark. I do highly suggest checking trigger warnings for any of H.D. Carlton's books. However, this girl, she was abused in her family, abused in her relationship. A guy is trying to get her out of it, and she keeps pushing him away because if her boyfriend finds out, then it's worse for her. It was just a very gut-wrenching book. I just didn't, whenever it got to the romance, whenever it got to a climactic part, I kind of wasn't invested. So I gave it a 3-star. It was okay. I just wasn't feeling it. Maybe it was the way that I was feeling in the middle of the month, being slumpy, or maybe it just didn't hit for me. But if you love dark romances and you already love H.D. Carlton, you probably will love Shallow River. I'm not saying it's terrible. It just wasn't for me. The next one is Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. Again, I don't know if this is about me. I don't know if it was the way that I was feeling. This book was so hard to get through. From page 1, was not connecting with any of the characters in this book. The romance I was not connecting with. I felt like it was very one-dimensional. I also felt like this was an over-descriptive writing in parts that didn't need to be overly descriptive. I found myself being pulled out of the story on multiple occasions, and I don't know if it was the way that I was feeling or if it's the way that the author writes her books. So I am going to be giving her another shot, but Long Shot I gave 3 stars to. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't the greatest. I will be giving Kennedy Ryan another shot in the future though, because I don't want to give up on authors just by one book. And then the last book that is my in-person book club pick is Where's Molly by H.D. Carlton. I was not having a good run with books. At this point in the month, I was just swinging out because Where's Molly I gave 2 stars too. I will preface this with, this is a spin-off, kind of like a novella almost, of the Haunting and Hunting Adeline duology. You find out who Molly is in Hunting Adeline, but this story actually gives some background to Molly, where she's at, who she is, what she's going through. I'm so happy that H.D. Carlton wrote this book. I just was not connecting with it. Again, I don't know if it was just the way that I was feeling or if it was just the story in general. I was so happy to actually read it though, because it did bring the Haunting and Hunting Adeline duology full circle for me. Kind of answered some questions that I maybe had about Molly. Just me personally, I wasn't connecting with it. I gave it 2 stars. I have heard from a lot of people that they absolutely love this story about Molly. So please don't take my word or my opinions for it, because if you are a Haunting and Hunting Adeline fan, you probably will like Where's Molly. So after all of that, I again was feeling slumpy, so I was like, let's just go back to my fantasy romance, my paranormal romance, and just dive into a world that I know that I already love, just so I could get the feeling back of my love for reading. So whenever I was going on to start up book 2 in the Of Shadow and Moonlight series by Luna Laurier, I found out that there is a novella that you are supposed to read between books 1 and 2, and this is called Tipped in Frost and Blood, and it's not very big, you guys, not very big. This takes place right after the ending of book 1, which I really enjoyed because our girl Cassie dealt with a lot of trauma in the first book. So now we are actually getting to see how she is coping with that trauma, how she is coming to terms with what had happened, her new life. There's a lot of changes going on. So you get to see how her life is being affected and what she is doing. And I felt like that is done very well. Also, you get basically a little novella of all of the cast of characters in this world. And they are gathering for winter solstice. They're going to be exchanging a lot of presents. You're going to have Barrett, who is one of the friends. He's just going to go off on somebody in Cassie's defense, and I'm all here for it. So this was really good, the gap between books 1 and 2. You don't have to read it. I do suggest reading it because A, it's not very long, and B, you actually get to learn more about the side characters before you jump into book 2. It kind of bridges some unanswered questions. So then I was just kind of rolling with my fantasy romance, paranormal romance, and I picked up Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. I had pre-ordered the audio version of this. It became available the day that it released. I pressed play and I do not regret a single thing. I loved this book, gave it 4 stars. It's brand new this month, so if you haven't heard of it yet, you might want to go check it out. It is a fantasy romance. It is about a witch and a witch hunter. They kind of play this little game of trying to seduce each other for intel. They have no idea that the other person is doing that. They might fall for each other. Some betrayal might happen. Things in the world are just not right. I devoured this. I felt like this world plot building and the character development was so well done for a first book in a series. Highly suggest picking out Heartless Hunter. I don't want to tell you much else because I don't want to give away any spoilers. I am all here for this series and I cannot wait for the second book. So then I'm finally getting to book 2 in the Beasts of the Briar series. This is Woven by Gold by Elizabeth Helen. I finished this book up. I'm so happy I did. I love this world. I love these characters. This is a very spicy fantasy romance reverse harem, and it is a Beauty and the Beast reimagining. It's so good, you guys, so good. This is book 2. Book 3 just came out back in December, and it's called Forged by Malice, and then there is one that's coming out this year, which I think is called Dead by Daylight, I think. Anyway, the second book picks up right where the first book leaves off. I don't want to tell you much about it, but just think Beauty and the Beast, think Fae, think 4 hot princes, our girl trying to get close to them and them pushing her away. It's so good. So good. I absolutely loved it. It is a slow burn romance. So don't go in thinking that book 1 is going to give you all the spice, because it is not. The next book that I picked up, I am so sad about, and I'm so sad that I am just going to be DNFing the entire series, even though I just got the new release in the original indie cover art paperback, and that is Daisy Hates, which is book 2 in the Magnolia Parks universe series. I started picking it up, so I was like, I want to get through the Magnolia Parks series so I can read the newest book. I'm not a fan. I am not a fan. I loved the first book, Magnolia Parks, when I read it early last year. I am not connecting with Daisy Hates. I think that I've kind of outgrown that Gossip Girl, rich girl attitude type of stories. I know that this is a little bit different than Magnolia Parks, but I feel like the characters are kind of the same whenever you're in their POV. So I am sadly DNFing this series. I gave this book 2 stars. I didn't have a good time. I know there are a lot of people out there that love this series, that will fight people on how good it is. It's just not for me. And that's okay. I tried, you guys. I own all the books that have the original art and everything. I tried. I wanted to love it so much, but I can't spend 3 more books on a series that I'm just not feeling. And then the last book that I read this month, which is The Cursed by Harper L. Wood. Can I just ask what is happening in this book? Book 1, which is The Coven, was so good. It was not a very long book. It was like 260 pages, I think. It wasn't long at all. It had a lot of action, a lot of plot, a lot of mystery. The romance was not insta-lovey at all. I loved everything about it, and the ending of book 1, that cliffhanger that she put, was just perfection. And then you dive into The Curse. It's all over the place. I feel like the only point to this book is sex. That's the only point. All of a sudden, you're starting out because she hates him. And then within 100 pages, she's going to die for him. She will fight everybody for him. What? What are you talking about? This was a hot mess. There's no plot. There's no plot at all. There's a lot of sex. And that's about it. There's no ending. The ending is so rushed that it's kind of like a whirlwind, and you sit there and you're like, what did I just read? So I think I'm kind of not liking this series, so I think I'm going to pre-order, I guess, these special editions that I have coming from Amazon or Barnes & Noble. One of the two. I'm going to uncheck mark those, cancel those, because I just, book 1 was so good. Book 2, no, it's a 2-star. It's not good at all. So do with that what you will. Alright guys, those are all of the books that I read in February. Please remember to leave me a comment below. Let me know, did you like any of the books that I read? Have you added any new books to your TBR? Do you have any thoughts and feelings on the ratings or the thoughts that I had of these books? I love to always know. Comment below. Definitely put a shamrock in the comment if you are still here in this video. But I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.